Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. So we are here. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
And I am Retini Corona.
I'm just turning this up a little bit here. And so welcome to Act Now Live. Today is the beginning of a new month for August. And so we are excited because our topic for the month is self-worth and value. And I cannot wait to talk about this for the whole month. And I'm so excited for our guest. And Reg and I, talked about some different things that we'll be kind of covering over the next few weeks. So we want to make sure that you join us. If you miss us, I just wanted to put this up real quick. We actually have a YouTube channel here. So follow us at Act Now Guide, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. So if you're not on Facebook, or if you have somebody that may not be on Facebook and you want them to join in and you want them to kind of watch our shows and catch up a little bit, send them over to the YouTube channel, Act Now Guide, and follow us there. Every week we will drop our episode in there as well. We'll go live on Facebook Live. So if you can join us here and, engage with us, we would love to have you here as well. So that is our show that we're going to be kicking off this month with, is self-worth and value. So today I kind of wanted, before we kind of head into everything too, I wanted to talk a little bit about this trend that's been happening like on Instagram and Facebook. For many of you that may have joined in, maybe you have seen Reg or myself post about it. It's a black and white photo that we posted. We were nominated by a friend privately, and my initial instructions were, that you put a black and white photo up, and it really is celebrating how beautiful, that this person thinks you are. Maybe, again, self-worth, how beautiful you come to terms with how beautiful you are. And then really, the hashtags that were used besides challenge accepted was empowering women, or empowered women, empower women, things like that. And so I kind of went along that path of just understanding that black and white photo that was going up as just somebody nominating me because they thought that I inspired them or I was beautiful. And then I wanted to nominate also my girlfriends that were doing that, not knowing exactly what was going on. So Reg, what did you think when I nominated you and you posted a beautiful, beautiful message? But before we get into the meaning, because I do want to talk about the meaning, what did you feel when you were nominated? And, just standing, again, this topic today is standing in your own power, and really, knowing who you are. So how did you feel?
So let's start with when you first nominated me. I was like, darn it, I don't normally do these. And there's a reason why I don't do them. It's because, and we're going to get into it a little bit, I think, but I didn't really know what was behind it or why I was doing it. But then when I read what you said, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Not just because Natalie, called me out on it, but because I liked what I understood in your message. And so I specifically, I call women beautiful all of the time. Every time I greet a woman in email, when I'm talking to them, even when I go on and I speak, I always call women beautiful. And that's because I think that we don't get to hear that enough, especially from other women, in a way that's true and genuine. And it's not about how you look, it's about who you are as a person. And so I took the challenge and I felt comfortable with it because I talked about something that was important to me and it connects to my values. That's another reason why I was good with doing it. But, I talked about my curly hair, and the message behind that was someone once spoke into my life, someone close to me, and gave me negative words, and I bought into those negative words, and I hated my curly hair. I now love my curly hair, and it took many years to love it, and my husband is a part of that, and just acceptance of who I am. And I wanted to use that as a way to help kind of perpetuate the message of it's so important that we love who we are and accept who we are. And a part of that is understanding your values and what's important to you. And so anyway, that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah. And I love that too, because you're a big part of me standing in my own power. We had talked, we always talk a lot about when Reg and I first met, and, having somebody that is a good friend that can see things that you might not be able to see and speak that power into you, even though you don't believe it yourself yet, because they see it from a different point of view. Reg was a huge proponent of, just me being able to believe in myself and too. And so, I thought that it was such a great challenge, but then also, I do want to talk about what it actually meant or where it actually originated. Now, again, the hashtags itself, empowering women, empower women, supporting women, things like that, that has been around for a while. And we know that. But the challenge accepted black and white photo that it started originating from recently in the past, maybe week or so, I would say about a week or so, actually. And I learned this because of other women who decided to post, but they posted about the actual origination of this trend, I should say, right? And so I wanted to share that just so that people understand as well. But really, this black and white picture craze that's been going on started from just as a way for women to raise their voice and to stand in solidarity with women in Turkey. And so I don't know if people actually knew that, but I wanted to talk about that real briefly because that's where it came from. I did some research and I found that Turkey is one of the top countries soaring in their rates of violence against women. And this particular black and white picture was because of a brutal murder to a 27-year-old student. Her name is Pinar Gultekin. So I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I do want to say her name. And, just looking at some of the statistics in Turkey, in 2019, 474 women were killed there, which is a 200% increase from the 237 women just in 2013. And their government and their justice, they don't do very much about that to stop these crimes. And basically what's going on is that the Turkish people just wake up every day and they see black and white photos of a woman who has been murdered on their social media feeds, in newspapers, in the TV, on television. And so that's really where it originated, and really to get women to stand in solidarity with these Turkish women that were lost in these brutal murders. And so I did want to bring light to that because I think it's important. Again, I was under the understanding of something totally different, and which made me think, even looking at social media, even looking at, how you either participated or you didn't participate in it. It's interesting because as we walk into this topic of self-worth and value, sometimes when you think about things, like let's say you jump too quickly to do a post, and then you see this actual real explanation, you might be taken aback and go, oh no, what did I just do? I didn't even know about that, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to scramble and take it down. And I just wanted to bring that up because even in the topic of self-worth, I think it's super important when you're looking at social media, even if you didn't know about it and you stand true that this is what you thought when you were posting it, it has nothing to do with it. Yes, maybe bring light to it, but it doesn't mean that you have to backtrack and pull it down because of the misunderstanding maybe of what you thought, because you had a different understanding, and how you interpreted how somebody nominated you or however it was, it's something that you also agreed on and you were able to stand in your purpose. So that was my point, is that, yes, with social media, with not even on social media, but in person, when you're learning about trends, when you're learning about things that are going on in this world, try to get, the education about it, or try to look at it and then think about it and internalize it, and then decide how you want to come out with whether or not you want to speak or not. And Reg and I have had shows about this too, with Black Lives Matter, with everything, with whether you, with coronavirus and whether you agree with wearing a mask or not. There's so many things going on in our world right now that you can stand for or not stand for, or maybe you don't want to talk about it, and maybe you do want to talk about it. And I do want to make sure that people just understand that part of standing in your power is really knowing what you believe in. Like Reg had said, it goes back to your core values, and really looking at that and understanding that if it aligns with my core values, then stand in it, and stand in it authentically and be proud. And if it doesn't, stand in that as well, proud, and say, nope, I'm not doing that because I don't believe in that. And whether or not people like me or not, I'm standing in my own power. And so I thought that it was pretty relevant, to kind of talk about what's been going on just recently in just this simple trend that's been all over social media. If you've been on either Instagram or Facebook, I believe that's where I've seen it the most. What about you, Reg?
No, I totally wholeheartedly agree. I think this is why we talk about, and I know I always talk about, it's so important to be self-aware and to know what your core values are, because when you understand who you are, your mission and your values in life, then it makes it much easier to be, one, authentically you, and two, not to worry about what other people think about what you say when you do show up, because you know that you're always standing in authenticity. I am not a huge fan of social media. You guys have heard me say that for various reasons. But when I do come out and I'm speaking on social media, I tend to say authentically what I feel. And I know sometimes I'm going to ruffle feathers. I know sometimes I'm going to push up on topics in a way that's going to make people a little bit uncomfortable. I remember going to the California State Capitol a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember that. And I was advocating for funds to be put back to support homeowners who had lost their homes. And there were a number of things around that. And I went online on my page and I was talking about that. And I had someone post, they didn't like what I said. And they actually said something mean. They were like, I thought you were smart until, they read that. And so there's two ways you can look at that. One way is you can take it personally and take offense to it and then feel hurt and like, maybe I shouldn't have posted in that way. Or the second way is, which is the way that I did. I am standing for something that I believe in. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, and that opinion will not always align with mine. And that is okay. But being true to myself means that I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know what I believe in. And I'm going to stand in that confidently. I'm not going to be disrespectful of other people and their opinions, because another core value for me is love, which means that I'm always going to show up from a place of love, regardless of how someone feels about me. But there is a certain freedom and confidence that you get in having an awareness of who you are and what is important to you and what you stand for. And so when it comes to posting on social media, when it comes to even speaking out about things, when I choose to speak out about something, I'm very confident in that. And I think the reason why is because I've done that work around my values and my mission in life and knowing kind of my purpose. Before that, years ago, I wasn't always as confident in standing up on particular subjects. Like, I've always been outspoken and I'll assert myself, but I wasn't always outspoken as it relates to opinions around social issues or things of that nature, because I hadn't quite done the work to narrow in on, well, what do I really stand for, right? And so now that I've done that and I understand that, I have clarity on it and I'm very clear about it, then it takes away that uncertainty and that guessing around, do I post, don't I post, what do I say, what don't I say, is it the right thing, is it not the right thing? It's very clear for me, and it's a very clear decision. So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah. Well, and I have a question, because both of us are moms, and, just looking at the next generation that we're bringing in, whether it's your son or your daughter, a lot of self-worth comes with what we speak into each other, or into ourselves, I should say, right? And so, without even thinking, I say a lot of things, and my daughter calls me on it every single time, and she says, stop saying that about you. It's the self-negative talk, right? And she catches me every single time, and she scolds me, and she's only 12 years old, and it makes me really think, oh my gosh, like I don't even know I'm doing that sometimes, but she calls me on it. So thinking about how, the more self-confident that I am, the more that's going to, be passed on to her.
Mhm.
But when I'm in my areas of that time where I'm not as confident, she catches it right away. I feel bad because I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So what do you do as a mom, and with your kids, seeing you, whether it's your son? My son doesn't say it as much as my daughter, though. That's why, with maybe your daughter, does she catch you doing that kind of thing, or is it just me or people that are listening? Are you noticing that maybe another generation is catching you, and kind of keeping you in line as well, which I think is really kind of cool, but it makes me come to terms with I need to make sure that I'm speaking positively.
I'm not sure if it's generational, and so therefore, the younger generation is recognizing it. I think it's from what I've seen, it's more about who you're around and who's close enough to you to hear those thoughts come out verbally.
Mhm.
Um, I know with my daughter, she and I, and my son too, the three of us have lots of conversations around confidence and self-worth and asserting yourself, and we remind each other. But I noticed that my husband catches me, Daniel catches me
Ah,
sometimes when I say things, and I don't know that it's so much about self-worthiness as much as it is about, as I've gotten older, there are things I've experienced health-wise that make me feel, man, I never thought that at 54 I'd be experiencing this. And so now how do I deal with this? And it's nothing major, but it's
yeah.
enough to just, make life a little uncomfortable sometimes. And
Mhm.
so Daniel will remind me, stop thinking that way. Don't even focus on those thoughts. And so I think it's really just this notion of, there are times where we're dealing with things and we feel self-defeated, or we have those negative thoughts. And I always call it the negative self-chatter that goes on in our head.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, right? And what I have noticed is, we've talked about this a little bit before, it's like a muscle. You have to keep
Mhm.
exercising that growth mindset, because
Mhm.
that negative chatter often falls into a fixed mindset. And so you have to start coming out of that. And part of the way that you do that is recognize that you're doing it.
Yeah.
So the more that you can recognize it, then the sooner you can combat it and switch the frame of thought. And so that becomes like exercising and building a muscle, right?
Right.
So that's really how I look at that. And I really do believe that those around us that are in our lives, and sometimes that's our kids, they're in our lives to help support, help uplift, help encourage. And they may not even know that that's why they're there. But I just believe, from a spiritual perspective, we connect on a very spiritual level as
Mhm.
human beings. And it's why I don't discount what kids think,
Right.
because they are still spiritual beings living this human existence. And they are, sometimes they don't even realize the wisdom in the words that they have. And I think what you
Mhm.
just described is a perfect example of that, with your daughter McKenna, and how she
Mhm.
actually weighs in on your thought process, and she helps to correct you, like, mom, no, don't say that,
Right.
because that's
Right.
not true, or you
Right.
shouldn't think that way. So
Yeah, yeah. So, heading into our month, we have some really, great topics. We have a great guest next week that will be
yeah.
with us. So you guys cannot miss this guest. She is incredible. She has a beautiful story of self-worth, that I'm hoping that she can share. But I'm excited for her to be here. What are you excited about with this month, Reg?
Oh man, I'm excited about Holly being a guest next week. I was a guest on her show. I know that you were a guest on her show. She is an amazing woman, and I love, love, love just listening to her and the wisdom that she has to share. So I'm excited about that. Um, but this idea of self-worth, this goes with mindset. And so we're tackling these things that actually are often barriers for people. And sometimes they don't even recognize that they're barriers. I know I didn't. And so covering those things and then getting just words of wisdom and tools that can help to address them so that you can then move past them. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. I think this is a really good topic. It's something that I have overcome, but continually have to overcome. Like you said, it's a daily habit. It's not something that you just overcome once and then you're ultimately cured.
Right.
It's something that you have to continue to exercise that muscle in order for it to be more natural, I would say, and just something that lives in you.
Yeah, I think that it's just, I always look at it like I've gotten better, but I've never reached the end, right? So what it is the more you learn and the more you open yourself up to change, you start elevating to different levels, right? Yeah. And so you start dealing with things in a better way. So I absolutely still encounter a lot of, the thought patterns and the things that happen that we've talked about that get in the way of our progress and taking action now. But the difference is I respond to things differently now. And the time in which it takes me to respond and flip the switch is much shorter. So I don't, I love to use that word ruminating. I don't take time ruminating over it for days or for weeks. It's like, it's a little bit of a bump in the road. I see it, I recognize it, and it's like, oh, yep, I know what that is. Okay, let me switch. And then I immediately go into what I've learned to combat that and overcome it.
Yeah. And that's the whole action process too. I think the more that you step into being an action taker and being able to assess and then committing and using the tools to actually then transform, right, you into being able to make those quick decisions. And then the long term is you don't perseverate, you don't ruminate on it long, enough for it to bother you, and you can get to what you need to get done. So that's the whole action process. And I love that everything that we're learning, even between us and working on, it goes back to what we're teaching in our book. And so for those of you who want to dive deeper with us, we do have a private Facebook group as well. Those are the private Facebook group also goes to people who have signed up for our newsletter and our emails. We have a free action checklist that would be downloaded when you first sign up, as well as an e-course. It's a 5-day e-course. And then we still send out, emails every week to you, as well as if you're on Facebook and you want a private Facebook group, we jump on there and dive deeper than just our Sunday shows. So don't forget to join us there, but sign up for our mailing list and then join us in the Facebook group, because we can dive deeper with you there and we can answer questions and be a little more accessible to you. So we wanted to remind you about that as well. So I'm excited for this month. I hope all of you are. Please come back next week, because we will have Holly Dowling on with us. She is a good friend of both of us, and you guys are going to love her. She is one of the most beautiful souls that I've ever met. And so I'm so excited to have her here. And hopefully, we'll all learn from her from being on our show. So
absolutely. And just a reminder that this week we're going to be doing a webinar on Wednesday, the 5th in the morning. And I know it's at 10 o'clock Pacific time. And then based on where you are, 11 o'clock your time, Natalie. And we're excited about doing that presentation, that webinar, because we're going to be diving deeper into these topics, and we're going to really dive into 2 specific areas. It's called shifting your mindset for taking action. But we are really digging into 2 specific areas. One is around your mindset and looking more at mission, vision, and values, your personal mission, vision, and values, so you can lock into that. Looking at beliefs and what beliefs that might be limiting you, and then going into the whole goal setting process. And there's some stuff on the goal setting process that we haven't talked about as much in our show and even in our group that I'm super excited for us to share.
Yeah, and I'll come back on here and post the link if anybody wants to join that WebEx. I believe it's free, so you can join in. It's 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time. For those of you in Mountain, it would be 11 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday this week. So yeah, thanks for I totally forgot to announce that. But yeah, so I will come back and put the link in here for people who are interested in joining us for that as well. Yeah, and we'll be back then next week with Holly Dowling, with our really good friend, and continuing on this topic of self-worth and value. So come back and join us next week. All right, good to see you guys.
Bye, everyone.